do not rush going into marriage. It is a legally binding contract. Ascertain whether or not that's even a thing that is worth doing for you. It might not be. Alrighty. We've covered one Shapiro quite enough for the last couple weeks. I don't think we need to worry about that one. So we'll cover the other Shapiro. We're going to cover Abby. But before we do that, let's go ahead and hop into the fan art section. The first piece of fan art we have here is from Lunar Muse Serenity. They said 2 for the price of 1, so we have 2 different outfits on display here. There's a 1. And there's a 2. Hey, this one's got some asymmetrical design going on in the socks, too. The next one we have is actually not a fan art of me, but fan art of channel editor Cherry. These both are from Kitterdoodle, so there are 2 pieces of Cherry fan art here. As always, thank you all for your fan art submissions. If you want your fan art to be shown in a future episode, the best way to do so is to drop it into the fan art section of the Discord. With that said, thank you very much, and let's go ahead and get right into the discussion about why you need to discuss marriage by the second date. Apparently. Now, I'm going to say before we even start this, I don't think you should do this. That's a quick way to get somebody to not go on a second date with you. But let's take a look here.
Hello, Classic Crew, and welcome to today's video, where we're going to be talking about why waiting to ask the big questions is just a big waste of time.
Okay. I hate her opening. It hurts my ears.
Are new to my channel, here we talk about classic living and traditional values, and a huge part of that is dating and relationships. I find the entire topic very interesting, and
Do you really? I find it so interesting that I'm going to speed you up so you sound more like your brother.
I really like sharing my thoughts on it in today's modern era where dating seems to be devoid of purpose and marriage is put off until way too late. So I like to talk.
Dating is devoid of purpose? I'm sorry, Abby. When I go on a date, the purpose is to find more out about the person, see if they are a more compatible partner. It also could be an excuse that I am hungry and we are going to go get food. And the quality time is an added bonus. It could be any of these things. But if I'm going on a first, second, third, fourth date with somebody, my aim is discovery to determine if I want to actually continue with this relationship. That's what I'm trying to do in that date. So I don't think purposelessness would be the best way to describe that.
Talk about it from a traditional perspective, from a classic perspective, and give you advice on how to actually get what you want out of dating. Because I think a lot of the time we get distracted with this whole narrative that dating needs to be so much fun and like a big party. But at the end of the day,
dating needs to be so much fun and a big party. I would hope dates are fun, Abby. What dates have you been on that are not that? If you go on a date and it's not fun, usually that's not a good thing.
Dating is fun, but it is for a purpose and it's for a reason. And if you don't treat it that way, well, you're going to end up unhappy in the end. So I'm really excited to get into today's video. Today, we're going to be talking about this big topic of asking the big questions and why it's important. So if you're not already subscribed to my channel, hit that subscribe button now and hit that notification bell so you can get...
Nope. You are not allowed to plug on this channel, Abby. Only I am allowed to plug on this channel. And when I plug, it is usually for, generally speaking, one of 2 things right now. The first one would be DDLG Playground. If you want any variety of sex toys or even just cute outfits, you can find them over there, and you can use coupon code Suris to get 10% off of literally anything in the store. If you like my content, then that is amazing. You should go get something there to go, make you and your partner feel better. If you don't like my content, why would you spend extra money just to spite me? Just use the fucking coupon code. Go get a dildo. Go fuck yourself. It's fine. We're also sponsored by Wraith Energy. There's a link for that as well if you need energy drinks for all the fucking you're going to be doing. Bragwin tried to put that through, and it didn't work because Sarah Chikorita came in with OWO shields. Haha! Your terrible war word has been converted back into a perfectly reasonable OWO. Fuck it! Axolotls with Cream, thank you very much for redeeming your points for an OWO as well. And Avalon of Babylon, thank you for redeeming your points for an Ada. You fucking degenerate. Right after the DDLG Playground plug, too. You did it. Get cucked. All right, let's continue with Abby.
get notified of all my new videos. And I would love if you would also consider subscribing to my subs.
Nope.
So if you have dated in the modern era, you'll know that dating is stressful because there are a lot of people who have taken the poison pill that tells them that dating is just for fun. And then they don't want to get into those big questions. They don't want to have the relationship defining talk, which I find to be ridiculous because that should be the first conversation that you have. And
wait, that should be the first conversation? Wait, what? Okay. Hypothetical. Let's pretend that I have found somebody I want to go on a date with. Raz has approved them, and I go on that first date with them. We sit down, we order our drinks. I want myself a Diet Coke because Diet Dr. Pepper is never at any of the restaurants I go to because they all unilaterally hate me. And then, as we are sitting down, we've ordered an appetizer. There's some mozzarella sticks coming to the table. They're piping hot. As they're about to be set down on the table right now, I immediately turn to this person and go, "So, do you want to be girlfriend?" How fast do you think they would run immediately? And justifiably so. This is a first date. We are going on this to figure out if that's even a thing that is worth pursuing. If the first thing that happens in that first date is, "Hey, do you want to be an item?" That is a very quick way for somebody to say, "Excuse me, I have to go to the bathroom," for 15 hours. At least that's how long you'll be waiting for them to come back. Spoiler alert, they're not coming back. You ran them off. No, Abby, that is not the first thing we should be asking people. That is one of the most terrifying things to ask somebody on the very first date. And also, like, wildly inappropriate in 99% of situations.
it ends up delaying the inevitable. That is where I want to start with this video. When you wait to ask those big questions, essentially, do you want to have children? Do you want to get married? You are just going to be delaying the inevitable until you're too far in for it to be an emotionless breakup. Right? If you're dating someone and you guys really have chemistry and you're getting along, you're hitting it off, everything seems to be going well, but you're avoiding those big questions because maybe you know the answer to them, then you're gonna get really emotionally invested and delay what's going to happen anyway by however long that might take. Now,
I mean, there's a really easy solution to this. Polyamory. It solves that problem right there. Oh, your partner doesn't want or can't have kids, and you are not comfortable with the idea of adoption for reasons A, B, C, or D, okay, there might be another partner who can help with that, Abby. It solves that problem. You don't have to pressure people into universe-shattering conversations on the first and second date. This is a very easy catch-all solution for situations like this. It's there. It is an option. It is available for you. You can do it. Let's assume you don't have the capacity for that, and you are dating somebody and you are enjoying the company with them. You and them might actually be on the same page about kids and careers and all that stuff, and not even realize until you have those conversations. There's nothing wrong with delaying those conversations because guess what, Abby? Sometimes being in a relationship with somebody who you love can influence the way you approach those conversations. Somebody who wants to be a mom or wants to be a dad and have kids might find themselves with somebody who doesn't want those things, and over time realize that, you know what, actually, they're comfortable just with the relationship as it is. They don't want to introduce a bunch of little crotch gremlins running around as well. The exact opposite of that can happen, though, as well. Somebody who doesn't want children and is with somebody who does might actually find that they do want kids with this person later on down the road because they are that comfortable in with the relationship, and there's nothing wrong with introducing another couple of little pattering feet into the equation. Both of these things can happen. You can find yourselves gravitating towards the same page, but if you just say, "Hey, Maria, this is a good first date and all, and I haven't even taken a bite of my steak right now, but if I were to put my pain in you and I were to give you a good old cream pie, would that upset you? Would you be upset if I told you to bear my kids?" That is unilaterally uncomfortable on first date shit. Completely. These types of questions only work in the scenario where you and the other person are some form of desperate, where you are both in a headspace where you want to be as quickly as possible legally bound to another individual so that they cannot separate themselves from you. It shows a giant lack of confidence in your own personal charisma, as well as a lack of security in this potential partner. You know, none of these stances make sense when you actually examine them with an ounce of logic. But continue, Abby. Continue to tell us why people should throw their lives away immediately on the prospect of the very first date.
I know a lot of women who wait far too long to ask those big questions, and then they don't feel comfortable asking those big questions when it comes down to it. So they're a year into their relationship, and they can't ask, are we getting married? Are we gonna have a family? Because they waited too long. Now, they could ask, right? They should ask. When I say they can't ask, what I mean is that they feel scared to ask because they are emotionally invested. They are invested in that relationship and think, okay, I've put in so much time and energy into this relationship that for me to actually give up by asking the big question, which will resolve an answer that I should have had a very long time ago, is going to actually undermine me. It will not undermine you. It'll allow you to move forward, but...
So here's where I actually have to agree with Abby. Yes, if you are in a relationship with somebody for a year and you guys have not had the conversation about whether or not you're going to engage in those kinds of legal bonds, whether or not you're going to infest your home with those kinds of cross goblins, if that is not a conversation you've had at that point, then sure, at that point, go ahead, have that conversation. It will at the very least allow you to move forward. Or, like I said, if you and your partner aren't on the same page about those things at that point, it'll give you guys a starting point to figure out if you guys might be able to get on that same page through a discussion, through an agreement, or, you know, lacking any of that, understanding that you guys are in separate situations. And maybe polyamory is the answer at that point. Who fucking knows? It doesn't matter. All that matters is that, awkwardly, I actually have to agree here with Abby. Have that conversation. Figure out if you and your partner are on the same page. But for very different reasons. The way Abby frames this conversation, it is that you need to have these conversations about marriage to determine whether or not your partner is worth your time, whether or not they are going to sign the legal documents, whether or not they are going to allow themselves to be lei impregante, or vice versa. That's her goal. My side of it's probably very, very different. From my standpoint, you need to have that conversation because clear communication is important. That's it. That's all it is. It's not about locking your partner down for the long term for anything. It's just about having clear communication once the boundary for that kind of communication is down there. There are certain boundaries and conversations that you can or can't have with your partner. If your partner is not comfortable with sex, for instance, let's say they're ace and sex repulsed, then the conversation about that might be a boundary that can't be talked about until you've both consented to that boundary being dropped. Marriage is another thing. If somebody's on their second major relationship in life, their first one was a marriage and it failed, marriage may not be a boundary they're willing to cross with you conversationally, or much less the actual sheet of paper itself. At the end of the day, communication is important. Not communicating about everything, but communicating about the things you both are comfortable communicating about and knowing where those boundaries are in the interim.
There is that sunk cost fallacy, that idea that I invested a lot of time and energy into something, so therefore I can't back out. I need to keep investing more and more and more.
Again, I agree with this. The sunk cost fallacy exists for a reason.
Not true. But this is why delaying asking those big questions is going to get you in trouble, because you're delaying the inevitable of finding out the truth, finding out who this guy is and what he wants. Now, I don't think that the guy you marry has to be perfect. I don't think that the guy you're dating needs to be all figured out and have everything solved. He should be, as you are, a work in progress, but somebody who wants to improve and grow over time. But there are certain things that are non-negotiable, and two of those things are marriage and children. He needs to have the right answer to those questions pretty early on, because you don't ever want to marry somebody who is hesitant to marry you. That is a whole mess that you don't even want to get involved in.
I mean, that is true, but the idea that your partner needs to have the right answer on marriage and the right answer on kids, it kind of befuddles me a little bit. It's okay for you and your partner to disagree on things, and it's okay for you guys to go, hey, maybe you don't want kids in one respect, but you might be comfortable with them in another respect, like not wanting to have kids biologically, but certainly being open to the idea of adopting. It's okay for you guys to not be on the same page so that you can do things like broker compromise, if that's even on the table. Needing this to be some multiple choice thing where like, aha, if you don't have the right answers to these, you fail my test, and now it's time for me to leave this relationship. This entire year was a waste because I essentially purity tested you and you failed. That's not helpful. That's a quick way to engage in very toxic relationships where the only people that you're actually going to be in long-term relationships with are people who are equally as lonely as you are, while also being incredibly impulsive and having very bad decision-making skills, because they will be willing to jump very quickly on board to bad ideas merely because they've been proposed. They have the right answer to your multiple choice question, but it does not mean that they are the right person for you.
So much of the time what happens is that you end up stuck with a guy who you can't have a future with, but you don't want to break up with. It can be really difficult when you're in those situations to actually see the good of ending things. Breakups are hard. Breakups are painful. And so I'm somebody who tends to suggest that we should not put ourselves in situations where we're going to have to go through a lot of breakups that are painful, or a breakup that comes at the end of 3 years that could have been spent better somewhere else. Often, what ends up happening in today's day and age is we get stuck mired in relationships that don't have a future, and a lot of that comes from not asking those big questions early on.
So here's another position where I have to agree with Abby, but disagree based on intent. I agree with the idea that people, and it's not just a this day and age thing, Abby, this has been happening since people have established the ability to have relationships. They just didn't talk about them because it was considered faux pas. That's neither here nor there. The conversation being had here is about wasting one's time, spending a bunch of time in relationships you don't need to be in. I agree kind of with the point. When you see the red flags in a relationship and it's time to go, it's probably time to go. I've fallen guilty to this myself, where there have been red flags in a relationship, and it was only after it was over that I started seeing them in all actuality, in hindsight. But it should be noted, when we are having these kinds of conversations, not all long-term relationships that end are wastes of time. Bear in mind, if you have a long-term relationship and your partner dies, that is a long-term relationship that has ended. Would you say that it was all a waste of time? I would hope not. So when it ends via other arbitrary means, both of you deciding that you're actually not super compatible with each other, one of you having to move for a job and the other not being willing to be on the same page with that, or any number of things. The list of reasons why people break up are myriad and huge, and sometimes involve a mental home. It depends on your history. But realistically, because those reasons are so myriad, I don't think it's safe, and I don't think it's smart to actually say that any of those relationships are wastes of time merely because an end was put on them. The stories from those relationships can be used as things that you use to better yourself. You used to work on your own character. I mean, it's just like a fucking book. You may love every second of reading a book, but as soon as it ends, does that mean the time reading the book was wasted? I don't think it does. A lot of this kind of dials back to the idea that unless something is forever, it's a waste of time. This, I'm not saying for Abby it comes from a place of her religiosity, though we do know she is a very orthodox religious person. But the idea that something that is temporary cannot have immense value in and of itself is an idea that is thrown around by fundamentalist religion all the time. It's one of the reasons that an eternal afterlife is constantly posited as the be-all, end-all goal of whatever faith you happen to be in. It's the major reward. It's the one thing that never ends, apparently. I agree with Abby insofar as we are talking about not wasting your time. But in my interpretation, not wasting your time means once you see red flags, address those red flags. Either have hard conversations about them or go ahead and abandon the relationship because you know what a red flag is. You know when somebody is, say, abusive, for instance, as an example. One of many you could bring up. Hell, what are red flags you know? Let me know in the comment section below after you've subscribed and all that other fun stuff. There's plenty of reasons why a relationship might end. Where I don't agree with, where Abby's concerned, is the idea that a relationship that doesn't end in a marriage or kids is automatically a waste of time. In Abby's estimation, the only relationships that matter are the ones that end in marriage or have kids. This automatically means that most LGBTQ relationships are going to be thrown on the chopping block in her head because most of them aren't going to end in kids. I mean, they certainly can. Adoption is always an option. But in Abby's worldview, that's not one of the ones that's going to be utilized here. Lady Isabel, thank you very much for redeeming your points for an ada. You fucking degenerate.
Right? We want to imagine a world where the chemistry will be enough to carry us through all the way to the wedding. But chemistry and compatibility are not the same. I've talked about this a lot on my channel. I have a video on it. I have a podcast on it. You can listen to them. But the thing about it is that chemistry on its own is not going to make a relationship survive. Compatibility on its own will not make a relationship survive. You need both. So having chemistry with someone and avoiding the compatibility question can actually set you on a path of being with someone for a really long time, maybe even 2, 3, 4 years, and never having that future set in stone. You can be having a great time, but you don't actually have a guarantee that they're going to stick around. And that is a terrible feeling. And that's a real problem when you could have been dating other people, finding the person you were going to marry, starting your future, but instead you are stuck with someone who you love to hang out with, but who doesn't have a future with you in mind.
All right, so let's go ahead and break this one down point by point. For one, the idea that if you are dating somebody right now, that means you're stuck with them. You don't have the ability to go out and date other people, and therefore you won't find the one, whatever the one is, in whatever category she tries to use. From somebody who's polyamorous, maybe that just feels kind of ludicrous. There's nothing about dating one person that says that you can't date another person so long as the person you're currently dating consents to that, and the person you might be dating consents to that potentiality. So that idea just kind of falls flat on its head. It reeks of heteronormativity. The idea that not only is heterosexual, or not, heteronormativity is not the word I'm looking for, monogamous normativity? I mean, that's kind of under the umbrella of heteronormativity, but the idea is still there. The idea that it's normative, or to be desired, that everybody wants just a one-on-one relationship and that to be it. Not everybody does. And in fact, there are some people that do not function in those circumstances in the slightest. Those don't really get considered in Abby's worldview. This is another one of those, the relationship might end and therefore it doesn't have its own worth arguments. I just don't agree with that.
That can be solved very quickly if near the beginning of your dating, you get those big questions out of the way. Now, I want to be clear. I don't think that the first date, you need to get this all solved. I don't think it's bad to do it on a first date, but a lot of people can feel a little bit hesitant.
You don't think it's bad to do it on the first date? You don't think it's bad to sit down and have the conversation with a person and go, hey, do you want kids? Do you want to have kids with me? That is not a conversation to be having on the first date. I'm sorry. And if somebody agrees to have kids with you on the first date, you need to be very wary of where that particular impregnation fetish is probably going to lead.
On a first date to get into those big questions. Now, the reason I say I don't think it needs to happen on a first date is because I think a first date can be used to feel out how the chemistry is. I think you can just see, okay, do we get along? Do we like each other? And you might get like a little infatuation, but you're not going to like fall head over heels over anyone in that short amount of time. But by date 2...
that one's a lie. You can fall head over heels for somebody in a first date. It's a thing you can do. You don't know everything about them, so the thing you're falling head over heels for is probably a facsimile, probably not actually an accurate representation of who that person is. You may be falling in love with an image of that person, but you certainly can.
You are getting into something more serious. You could be seeing this person with kind of an eye toward the future. And so you have a right to ask those questions of, what do you think about marriage? What do you think about kids? Or it can come up more organically in the conversation as you guys talk about your siblings and your family and your parents and what you would want, and see how they respond. That stuff does need to happen early.
Okay, so that is at least a way of going about it. It is somewhat manipulative. It is a way of broaching those topics without broaching those topics. It's a manipulation tactic. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing or a good thing, but that's what it is. In other words, stop fucking so quick, but marriage, do that immediately. Yeah, in Earl Fire, that really feels like what it ends up being. In her worldview, she wants people to stop fucking so quick because if more people get married, then they can do all the fucking they want. But necessarily, polyamorous people get knocked out of that conversation automatically because they can't have marriages with more than one person. And were this pre-2015, and maybe even post, depending on what happens with Roe, LGBTQ people get knocked out of that conversation too because they can't have a marriage in a world where that gets overturned. I'm really hoping Obergefell doesn't get overturned. Anyways, continuing on.
It does. And theoretically, if you're dating within your faith and you're dating within your religion, the person across from you at the table is going to be on the same page as you are, hopefully. That they're going to want the same things that you do, want a family, want to get married. But
you might not even know they're part of your same religion, though. I guarantee you in my first conversations, unless it's somebody who knows who I am from my channel, the conversation about religion is probably not going to come up. Ideally, it wouldn't come up.
That isn't always the case. There are guys who are religious and are still afraid of committing and still afraid of getting serious. And you can feel that out, and you have a right to. And I think that's really important. As women, we have a right to ask these big questions. We have a right to know if we're making a good investment. Dating is an investment. It's an investment of our time. It's an investment of our energy. It's an investment of the care we might take of that person. And we have a right to know if it's a good investment. So asking that question.
I like this idea that relationships are all just transactional. It really boils people down to their, inner essences. It makes them nothing more than capital. Feels real awkward.
Early on is going to make a huge difference to the rest of that relationship. And you can start to trust each other more and more over time, as opposed to falling deeper in love, but feeling insecure. That is never worth it. It might be fun, and it might confuse you because that insecurity can often be confused with passion, but it's not passion, it's anxiety. And you don't have to be anxious in a relationship because you don't know where the other person stands.
And again, we've hit a point where I actually have to agree. I've got experience with this where I mistook my anxiety about a relationship that I was in the past with passion for the individual. I was constantly doing things that I felt were manifestations of my love for them, manifestations of my passion for that person, when it was really just my insecurity speaking. I was overcompensating for my anxiousness. I didn't realize I had anxiety at the time. It took me a visit to the psychiatrist and medication and a year and a half of therapy to actually get all that sorted out. But at the time, I didn't know any of that. At the time, I didn't realize that. So, as per usual, if there's a point where I have to agree with the person, we're going to point it out.
The last thing I'll say about this is that when you date someone and you don't find out early on whether or not they are interested in a longer term relationship, you will break up with them. And then when you move on to the next guy, you might find that you actually have kind of a false impression of men where you don't trust them because you feel like you've been betrayed. The fact of the matter is, the guy could have not been honest with you, but you also didn't ask the question. And if you didn't ask the question, it's kind of on both of you. But you don't want to go into your next relationship scarred and kind of give that man a hurdle to overcome that wouldn't have been there had you been more upfront with the previous guy.
Okay, that one feels weird. Don't deliver yourself to another man scarred. That feels awkwardly victim-blamey. Now, I understand that in the scenario presented, it's not that yikes, right? In the scenario presented, it's not that yikes. But that language, I've consumed enough of Abby's content to know that there is likely more things that she would take that particular conversation and apply them to. And that makes it yikesy enough for me. Yeah, it sounds very chewed gum. It sounds very don't deliver yourself to another man as if you are used goods. It reeks of bad vibes. It reeks of bad juju.
Because doing a lot of dating can build up calluses. If you date bad guys, you will build up calluses. I had that experience. Jacob had to break through some barriers with me because I dated some bad guys. And in this situation, if you didn't ask the question first and you got deeper and deeper into something that didn't have a future, it's on you more than him because he didn't want to ask that question anyway. And
Wait, okay, no, now we're straight in victim blaming territory. How is it on you more than him? How is the question of marriage and the question of children not equally shared responsibility between both parties? How is that more on you? That doesn't make any sense to me. You both are sapient individuals. You both are consenting adults. You both have the ability to use the human language. You both ideally have all of the exact same tools available to any given conversational element. So why is it that it's the woman's fault necessarily? How is it not equally shared responsibility between the both of you? Your reasoning is, well, because he didn't want to ask that anyway. You didn't want to ask either. So why is his not wanting to ask more valid than yours? That doesn't make any sense to me. At first, I was giving the benefit of the doubt. This didn't seem used goods conversation. This didn't seem super yikesy. But now it's feeling very much that.
not every guy is like that, but it is now possible that you will view all men that way. And that's not good for you either, because dating should be fun, but also the guy you end up with, you want to trust. You want him to feel like you trust him, and you want to trust him. It just is a nicer thing for you. So asking those big questions, just do it. It's scary.
That asking those questions are not going to increase your trust in somebody. I'm sorry. The person at the other end of the table being ready and willing to be married with you, being ready and willing to turn you into a baby factory, does not automatically mean that they are a more trustworthy person. It doesn't make them earn your trust. And if you believe that them having the right multiple choice questions or multiple choice answers to those questions is indicative of them being more trustworthy, then this advice is going to lead you to an absolute ass ton of heartache. Somebody being ready to marry you and impregnate you can be easily attributed to things like fetishes. It can be easily attributed to things like insecurity, immaturity. It can be attributed to all of those things. And none of those things broker trust. Not a single one of them do. Abby, this is now just on the face bad advice. It's been a mixed bag up to this point, but now it's just things that will be directly harmful to people who are trying to date.
It can be hard. It can break that chemistry that you were excited about. But doing it early is so much better than waiting and waiting and waiting until you are so deep that there's no way you're not going to have an emotional breakup or waste your own time. So that is today's video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to.
Or I'll let you know my thoughts in the video response that exists here that I'm doing right now. No, counterpoint. Do not rush going into marriage. It is a legally binding contract. Ascertain whether or not that's even a thing that is worth doing for you. It might not be. When it comes to kids, if you and your partner are not on the same page, that's fine. That doesn't necessarily mean that you two are incompatible. It doesn't necessarily mean that you two won't end up on the same page eventually. Here's a question I would pose to people like Abby. Would you rather be in a bad relationship, but it is a marriage and you have kids, or a good relationship where you both are happy, but there aren't kids? Do you value the idea of having children and the legal sheet of paper more than you value the relationship itself being good, happy, healthy, and stable? Which do you value more? I'm not saying you can't have a relationship that is a marriage and is good, happy, healthy, and stable. In an ideal world for her, I guess you would have both. But if you have the choice between the two, a bad relationship, bad not meaning it's going to end, but you don't do anything together, you don't have fun together, you don't spend time together, you don't share any similar interests at all, you don't play the same games, you've not read the same books, you might even come from different generations, depending on how applicable that is in that relationship. Would you rather have that, where you had a fun flame in the beginning and you guys got married and you guys had kids, but now the only time you spend together is, well, you don't? Or would you rather have the relationship where you do have all those positive things? You share similar interests, you read similar books, you play similar video games, and the ones you don't, you get to share with each other. Would you rather that kind of relationship where you're personally happy, but you're missing the kids element and the legal document? Or would you rather have the depressing, sad one, but you've got the kids and the legal document? Because if you think your kids are going to save the marriage, I have a wealth of data to show that's not going to happen. What do you think? Let me know in the comment section below as well on that one, as a follow-up to your previous comments if you've already put them in. Because I know my answer to that one. Personally, I would rather be happy and fulfilled than in a marriage and having kids. I want kids. But if I don't end up having them, I'm going to be happier just having a happy, healthy relationship than I will having a sad relationship where the kids are fucking present. That one doesn't matter to me as much as the living, breathing, actual partner I have versus the hypothetical kids that don't even fucking exist yet. Let me know in the comment section what you think. Hit the like button if you haven't already. Subscribe. Follow on Twitch if you haven't already. If you want to support my channel and what I do, I already plugged advertisements from DDLG Playground and Wraith Energy before. I'll also go ahead and say my Patreon's in the description below if that's a thing that you want to do or care about. As always, everybody, thank you for watching, and insert end of video tagline here.